Hi, everybody. Today I have the distinguished honor of having Dr. Taras Kuzio with me to discuss the Ukrainian-Russian war. And I just wanted to introduce him briefly. Dr. Kuzio is an expert on Ukrainian political, economic, and security affairs. In 2010, he predicted the Russian annexation of Crimea that would result from the ousting of President Yanukovych, and currently is an associate with the research and a research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society. There are two books that I found regarding this issue that you can find on Amazon. The links will be below.
The book on the right, The Crisis in Russian Studies, can be actually downloaded free of charge. So if your viewers go to the website of that publishing house, they can be downloaded free in PDF. Ukraine didn't really ever get a chance to be allowed to join NATO. It tried to get in 2006, 2008. There was opposition from Germany and France in particular because of their fear of Russia. And because of that, Ukraine was stuck in this no man's land, this gray zone between the EU and NATO and Putin's Eurasian empire. And we all know that those kind of gray zones are always problem areas for potentially to be attacked, for areas where imperial powers like Russia today would like to move into. So that needs to be changed, at the very least, because NATO membership might be taken off the table now with the peace negotiations. At the very least, the EU needs to provide Ukraine with a membership perspective so that Ukraine moves forward something like Austria and Sweden. Because there needs to be some kind of ownership over Ukraine by the West. At the moment, it's unsustainable that Ukraine's in this no man's land, and because that whets the appetite of dictators like Putin. So I think that has to be the way forward. Zelensky did sign an appeal to join the EU on the 28th of February. The EU, being the EU, typically is very slow about answering this, but it needs to, I think, move fast, and that could be part of maybe some kind of peace deal.
But that is also something that Putin and defenders of Putin's attack use as a justification, saying that NATO was a threat to them, and that's why they attack. So it's a tricky situation.
Well, it is. I mean, my view is that the NATO issue had nothing to do with Putin's decision. This is all to do with Russian nationalism and Russian national identity. Putin's been obsessed with taking back Ukraine for the last decade. And Ukraine was never on the cards to be offered NATO membership. I mean, that was never the case. And there was never any plans to put American or other missiles in Ukraine. So the idea that somehow Ukraine was going to be a threat to Russia is ridiculous. So that was the excuse. The real reason is that Putin has this very imperial Russian nationalist identity, where he believes that the Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusians are part of this pan-Russian nation. Therefore, Ukrainians and Russians are one people. They're little Russians. They should be part of the Russian world. That's right. the core reason why he's invaded. We have a very bizarre situation that in the 21st century, a dictator is his thinking is in the late 19th century.
It is certainly the arguments that he's made. He's never mentioned NATO in the last argumentation for invasion, and he's just simply stated that he completely laid out his theory as to Ukraine's statehood and the Russian Empire and so forth. So I concur. But yeah, it's a very interesting thing that Russia is proceeding in that direction so boldly.
Well, he's ruled a country for 22 years where he's taken the country back ideologically to the pre-Gorbachev era, because he hated Mikhail Gorbachev and his liberalization in the second half of the 1980s. And he's taken Russia back to this Tsarist nationalism, Tsarist imperial grandeur. And so all of those mythology have been around for a while. They've been around for 10, 15 years. I think that they have become more stronger and deeper with him, probably related to his isolation and in the COVID pandemic. I'm sure one gets the impression that he read a lot of history books during this pandemic, maybe too many history books. And the problem with the reading Russian history books, that they tend to be written by these white Russian emigre nationalists who, of course, always denied the existence of Ukraine. And you get a signal of that with his essay published in July of last year, the 6,000-word essay, which shocked a lot of people, but people like me already knew this kind of thing was there. But it shocked a lot of people to think, oh my God, he really believes all this nationalist mumbo jumbo. And yes, and so he's acted upon it. He created not completely artificial crisis in November. This carried on for 4 months, and then he invaded.
And I think he kind of single-handedly demolished the argument that NATO was a threat, because obviously NATO is doing everything, leaning backwards to avoid getting drawn into a conflict that they didn't start. So to think that NATO would be an aggressor in this situation is completely preposterous and evident to anyone to see.
Well, you see, dictators like him need enemies. They need internal enemies. They need external enemies. The regimes like Putin's regime cannot exist without enemies, without fifth columnists, without traitors. That's the world they live in. And his speech a couple of days ago was reflective of that. I mean, commentators talk about his speech from a few days ago as in the Stalinist mold, about these traitors, about the need to cleanse society of these traitors. I mean, it's really heavy, scary stuff. And there is a direct link between this growing totalitarianism, Stalinism inside Russia, and external military aggression. The two are completely connected with each other. And it's a product of his regime. His regime has become more of a dictatorship since the constitution was changed in 2020 that allowed him to de facto stay president for life.